Alright, just a quick word before we get into it. Rapid. Okay, jokes aside, sorry about the background noise, it's a particularly windy day over here, but I gotta record this today, otherwise it won't come out in time. Today we're talking about Dante, and yeah, I know that it's not time for the Warframes Where They Are Now video. That's got another, 3-4 years? But anyways, I figured it'd be a good idea to keep up with the current frames that come out as well, if nothing else as a comparison when it comes time for the Warframes Where They Are Now, so you could see how they started and where they ended up. At least, that's my intent. That being said, as far as Warframes Where They Are Now, I intend to, stop when I run out of primes to talk about, and only update it as we get the prime of each frame, as I feel that gives the frame enough time to really sink in and find their place. Base stats on a level 30 Dante are 390 health, 240 shield, 145 armor, 270 energy, and 1.15 sprint speed. Dante's passive is a little wacky, but I actually really like it. That being, Noctua, his grimoire, actually scans targets to the codex as you kill them, and status chance increases by 50% on the fully scanned targets. So, after you finish all your scans, it's actually going to be quite nasty. But even beforehand, it just kind of helps you out getting those done, which I'm a big fan of, because I honestly hate fucking scanning things. Dante's first ability is, well, he opens up the grimoire and forcefully feeds the enemies his reading material. As far as exalted weapons go, it's actually kind of nice. My favorite thing with it is the fact that it actually starts with the alternate fire ready to go. So that can come in handy if you have any of the, the tome mods. I ended up caving and picking them all up from other players after this came out, because I did not want to have to farm them. Either way, it does do slash damage, which is quite nice. It actually isn't half bad, setup-wise. It's definitely not the best exalted weapon, but considering how cheap it is to use, and the fact that you can put a mod on it that effectively makes it free to use, and in some ways actually helps you more than hurts you to use, it's quite good. Matter of fact, most missions I use Dante, I pretty much spend the entire mission using his grimoire. His second ability is Light Verse. This adds a chapter to the book, as well as healing you, your allies, and giving you all Overguard. Now, it doesn't give a lot of Overguard, it only gives about 500 at base value, but it does increase with strength. Same with the Overguard cap, which starts out at 15,000. Now, it isn't particularly strong, however, it has saved me a couple times, and the fourth ability is also why this is fairly weak, I assume. But we'll get into that when we talk about the fourth ability. His third ability is Dark Verse. This adds another chapter to the book, as well as applies slash damage to enemies in front of you within 50 degrees, and within 20 meter radius. Now, the interesting thing is the radius does increase with range mods, however the angle does not. It does apply slash damage, which is always really good, but considering the narrowness of it, doesn't seem all that great, right? Well, it's actually pretty effective, and with the fourth ability, which we'll talk about in a second, it's pretty nasty in tandem with that. So his fourth ability is Final Verse. Where the hell do I begin with this one? There's a lot to unpack, so we might as well just get started. So the way this one works is with your second and third ability, you have to cast two of them in any order to do one of the abilities that the fourth ability does. Now, depending on the combination, it does different things. So let's go ahead and start with if you cast two of the Light Verses, which is the second ability. If you do that in succession, you invigorate allies with a buff that increases health and grants Overguard, and kills and assists briefly regenerate Overguard. So, it starts you off with giving everybody 5,000 Overguard right off rip, and then you have a regeneration of 50 Overguard with a regeneration period of 2 seconds. That's 50 Overguard per second, by the way. I should have said that right off rip, but whatever. Has a pretty wide radius of 30 meters, and a really long duration of 45 seconds. And yes, all of these are increased by mods, except for the regeneration duration, sadly. But fair enough, getting 5,000 Overguard off of a simple cast isn't half bad, especially considering that's just base value. And that's not counting the casts from here too, either, so factor that in, if you will. As for the next one that it does, that would be Tragedy. So if you do 2 Dark Verses, it goes ahead and sends out a shockwave of damage that effectively has them take all of their damage that they would have taken over time from their slash damage instantly. Has a damage of 6,500 right off rip with a damage multiplier of 3 times, both of which are increased by strength mods. It also has a radius of 30 meters and duration of 45 seconds. This is a pretty nasty nuke ability, and I've already seen quite a few memes on YouTube about it, so if that's anything to go off of. In all seriousness though, this is pretty potent. I feel like there's more to him than just this though. As for the next one, which is Word Warden. Now, the way you do this one is you do a Light Burst followed by a Dark Burst. If you do this, it gives your allies a copy of Noctua that kind of floats over their shoulder and synchronizes with their attacks. So it effectively, fires at the at enemies while they're shooting. Now, something I started picking up on was I felt like it wasn't, as fast as my other weapons. So I decided to go into Captura of all things to test this because it's easier to see it if you can, move the camera away. Sure enough, I was right. It has a speed limit on it. And here it is. Either way, it does do a lot of damage, and it's actually 30% of the damage that your Noctua does normally. It is not impacted by mods, sadly, as far as the damage that it does goes. It also has a range of 30 meters and a duration of 45 seconds. I'm starting to think that all of them do. Actually, I know for a fact all of them do, but here we are. The last one, you have to cast Dark Verse followed by a Light Verse, and this summons birds that'll go ahead and swoop at the enemies to distract them and actually deal slash damage to them as well, which is kind of nice because slash procs are always nice. And it draws enemies away, however, I've noticed that part of it's not that effective. Granted, it does distract them like hell. Like, rather than leading the enemies away, it's more so it stops them in their place, I've noticed. And if it's a low level, it's actually kind of nice because it just shreds the enemies as it flies through them. It's really satisfying to go through, like the Syndicate missions, for example, and just cast this and just walk to the end of the mission. They deal 300 slash damage right on the base value, as well as a 50% status vulnerability and a vulnerability duration. Or of 30 seconds. Forgot to mention that they actually do make the enemies more vulnerable to status as well, which is also quite nice considering the rest of his kit seems to be based on like slash damage and whatnot. And of course you bring something like Cedo, which I tend to do anyway because it's a lot of fun to use. It can be quite fun in tandem with this. I will say, out of the 4, this one's my favorite. I really like just summoning the birds to go to town. And in case you're wondering, yes, it also has a radius of 30 meters and a duration of 45 seconds. As for my build, I have really high range and really high strength. I also have Molt Reconstruct and Arcane Energies on there. May go ahead and replace Reconstruct with Arcane Guardian or something. He heals pretty well off of his abilities, but Reconstruct is also kind of nice to have for now. I also have Archon Shards on him, 2 for strength, 1 for casting speed, 1 for armor. The empty slot's also going to be armor. After I do that, I may swap out Adaptation. I have not decided yet. It's kind of a I'll have to wait and see type deal. But so far I actually really like the setup. As for my Noctua build, it is nothing special. It gets the job done, but I intend to make a better one at some point. This is just kind of I got this done for the sake of getting it done. But honestly, even this does pretty damn well. I do want to get Galvanized Shot on here for the 40% direct damage per status, because of the fact that his passive works the way it does, especially once I get more of the scans done, of course. But right now I did a crit build. Honestly, I'm probably going to keep it a crit build and just squeeze Galvanized Shot on there somewhere. Zada's Invocation is quite nice with the energy regeneration, especially considering he starts with the charge active, so I could just go ahead and get the energy regeneration immediately, and then just keep it going. A lot of fun. Honestly, it's a lot of fun. It does come with the unique trait of being able to put as many of the tome mods on as you desire. I wouldn't put too many of them on here though, because then you sacrifice damage and make it a hell of a lot weaker. Granted, if you're using it as a utility tool, that's whatever, but it may be hard to charge it up. So bear that in mind. Feel free to, if you guys catch me out, feel free to show me your tome builds. I'm actually curious to see what you guys got going on for Noctua. That and Grimoire. I figured out you could name it, and so I did. Mine's called Shooting for Dummies. I hate that I'm proud of that. How does he perform for Deviri? Well, surprisingly, I actually got him pretty early on. He's pretty fun. He can go quite a ways with that Overguard regeneration. He can keep himself alive, and having the new potential is a lot of fun. He's definitely not my favorite to take in there. Honestly, that probably goes to Saren at this point, or Limbo. It's kind of hard to pick between the two. But either way, he does pretty well. And if you like him, well, honestly, that's probably not going to change too much when you go to Deviri. He functions just the same outside as he does inside. Mainly because, you know, he has access to an exalted weapon. And a lot of frames that do tend to be pretty decent because of the fact they don't have to worry about grabbing a weapon. Him even more so because of how, you know, energy efficient his is. When they announced Dante, I wasn't too sure about him. A lot of that was because of the fact that when they explained his abilities to the audience, I didn't really get what the fuck they were going for. I also didn't fully understand what they were doing with said abilities. Though, now that he's here, I kind of understand why that is. And that boils down to how complicated his fourth ability can be. Until you get him for yourself and use him for a little while, once you get acquainted with it, it's actually not that bad. But yeah. I will say, I'm glad that my fears were unwarranted, and he is actually pretty good. And it seems like the fanbase does genuinely like him. Haven't seen a lot of hate for him, although I'm sure it exists, because there's hate for everything. Hell, I'm sure there's people out there that hate the freaking Atlantic Ocean. I wouldn't be surprised. But, jokes aside, thank you all for watching, and have a great day. Oh, and real quick, this does not count as a wheel spin. Next video is also going to be a Warframe video. That's going to be a Warframes where they are now. Again, have a good one.